The rain had just stopped when Adrian Wolf stepped out of his black sedan and into the underground parking garage of his own company headquarters. To the world, Adrian was the sharp, untouchable CEO of Wolf Industries, a billionaire known for ruthless decisions and impossible standards. But tonight, he wasn't Adrian Wolf, the CEO. He was Mr. Reed, a quiet consultant conducting a surprise inspection. No one in the building knew he owned the empire. He preferred it that way. It was the only way to see the truth. As he walked past the rows of polished cars and concrete pillars, something unusual caught his eye. Near the far corner of the garage, where the fluorescent lights flickered and shadows gathered like secrets, a single beam of light glowed steadily. Curious, Adrian slowed his steps. There, seated on an old wooden crate beside the security desk, was a young security guard in a neatly pressed but faded uniform. His name tag read, Daniel. A thermos sat beside him, and in his hands was a thick textbook. Instead of scrolling on his phone like most night shift workers, Daniel was hunched over pages filled with complex diagrams, studying under the narrow beam of a small flashlight clipped to the desk. The main lights in that corner were clearly broken. Adrian paused behind a concrete pillar, watching. The young man's lips moved silently as he memorized formulas. He looked exhausted, yet determined. Every few minutes, he would rub his eyes, take a sip from his thermos, and continue reading as if his future depended on it. And perhaps it did. Adrian approached casually. "Long night?" he asked in a neutral tone. Daniel quickly stood up, slightly startled, almost dropping his book. "Good evening, sir," he said respectfully. "Yes, but it's okay. I use the quiet hours to study." Adrian glanced at the textbook. Advanced Mechanical Engineering. Not light reading. "Planning to switch careers?" Adrian asked. Daniel hesitated, then smiled with quiet embarrassment. "I already have a degree in engineering," he admitted. "Graduated top of my class 2 years ago. But my father got sick. Medical bills piled up. I needed stable work immediately, so I took this job." There was no bitterness in his voice. Just acceptance. Adrian studied him carefully. "So why keep studying?" Daniel's eyes reflected the flashlight's glow. "Because this uniform is temporary. My situation is temporary. I promised myself I wouldn't let circumstances decide who I become." The words hit Adrian harder than he expected. Temporary. When was the last time he had heard someone speak with that kind of conviction? Most executives in his company complained about bonuses from leather chairs. Yet here was a security guard in a dim parking garage preparing for a future no one could see. Over the next week, Adrian returned every night under the guise of inspection. And every night, Daniel was there, studying during breaks, solving problems on scrap paper, sometimes even watching free online lectures on his cracked phone screen. Adrian began asking subtle questions. He learned that Daniel had applied to dozens of engineering firms but was rejected due to lack of experience. He learned Daniel sent most of his paycheck home for his father's treatment. He learned Daniel refused financial help from friends because he believed dignity mattered. One night, Adrian asked, "If you had one opportunity, just one, to prove yourself, what would you do?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "I'd solve a real problem. Not a textbook problem. Give me something broken. I'll fix it." Adrian smiled slightly in the darkness. He knew exactly what to do. The following Monday, a confidential internal memo circulated through Wolf Industries. A new innovation challenge was announced. It was framed as a company-wide contest open to all employees, yes, even support staff. The prize? A permanent engineering position and a scholarship fund. The problem presented was complex: redesign a failing mechanical component that had been quietly costing the company millions. Senior engineers had struggled with it for months. When Daniel saw the notice pinned on the break room board, his hands trembled. Security guards weren't expected to participate in such things. But it said, all employees. That included him. For 7 nights straight, Daniel barely slept. After his shift, he remained in the garage sketching designs, recalculating load distributions, identifying flaws others had overlooked. He used the flashlight when the overhead bulb failed again. He ignored the quiet laughter of coworkers who told him not to dream too big. On the submission deadline, he handed in a carefully detailed proposal. 3 days later, Daniel was called to the executive boardroom upstairs, a place he had never been allowed to enter. He adjusted his borrowed tie nervously as the doors opened. At the end of the long glass table sat the senior leadership team. And at the center was Adrian Wolf, no longer Mr. Reed. No disguise. No shadows. Just the CEO himself. Daniel froze. The room was silent. Adrian stood slowly. "Daniel," he said calmly, "do you know why you're here?" Daniel swallowed. "Regarding the challenge, sir." Adrian nodded. "Your solution didn't just improve the component. It eliminated the flaw entirely. You saw what our top engineers missed." A quiet murmur filled the room. Adrian continued, "But what impressed me most wasn't your design. It was where you designed it. Under a broken light. In a parking garage. After working 12-hour shifts." Daniel's heart pounded. Adrian stepped closer. "I conducted those night inspections myself. I saw your discipline. Your refusal to surrender to circumstance. Wolf Industries doesn't need employees who work only when conditions are perfect. It needs people who create light in the dark." He extended a folder across the table. "Effective immediately, you are joining our engineering division. Full salary. Full benefits. And the company will cover your father's medical expenses." Daniel's vision blurred with tears. He had fought for years. The boardroom that once felt intimidating now felt like a doorway to destiny. Months later, Daniel led a team of engineers twice his age. His redesigned system saved the company millions. But more importantly, his story spread quietly through the building. Night shift workers began taking online courses. Interns stayed late refining ideas. A culture shift had begun, not because of a memo, but because of one flashlight in a dark garage. Adrian often watched from a distance, proud but silent. He had built an empire with strategy. But that night, he realized true leadership wasn't about power, it was about recognizing potential where others saw none. The parking garage light was eventually fixed. Yet Daniel kept the small flashlight in his desk drawer as a reminder: success isn't about where you start, but about refusing to stop. And if this story moved you, if you believe hard work in the shadows deserves recognition, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Because here, we tell stories that remind you that no matter how dark your situation looks, your light can still change your life.